setting the record straight.
Go ahead.
Okay, setting the record straight. Where you start talking about a situation of, was it twining into the vine? Now, if you have 1/4 of each part, I'm quite sure they don't have 1/4 as far as, but they still got it under law, whereas they can get the things and grant the things that they want.
Right, but that's only because prior to the civil rights movement and affirmative action, etc., you didn't have any rights at all. Right? What happened is in the 17th century, right here in Georgia, where we dwelled, the Yamassee, Native Americans, the Europeans came in and made a deal with us for equipment, heavy equipment, because we couldn't sell our goods because heavy equipment was starting to come in, more sophisticated farming. So they made a deal with us and told us that they would give us a certain amount of heavy equipment, like they usually do, and we pay them back in 6 months. You follow? However, and you can read this, you can read up on this. However, after we did it, they didn't hold true to that treaty because it was oral, not a written agreement. They came back within 3 weeks. And then when we couldn't afford to pay them, what they did is they took the women and the girl children from us. All right? It didn't stop there, because that's not how the Yamassees dealt. Right? And they started having children by them. All right? What happened within a year's time, the Yamassee were trying to hold true to their word, and when they found out that these Caucasians, these British Caucasians, were having sex with their daughters, there was what they call a Yamassee massacre here in Georgia, right? Like the Zulu did, and they rose up and they started massacring Europeans and pushed them off the land. But what they had to take back into consideration is that a lot of their women had been raped by these Caucasians, and that the children being born to them were mulattoes. You follow that? These mulattoes grew up, wanted to leave our campsites, or what they call presently reservations. They want to leave the land and go and look and seek out lighter people. So when these mulatto children sought out Caucasians to marry, they produced these Caucasian-looking people who by right can say they are Yamassee. You follow? You understand how it happened? And then what happened is the tribes a war broke out. We blended in with the Seminole, the Creek, the Oshito, the Wichita, and different tribes as Yamassees. We ended up inside because then all the Europeans came together against us because we whipped a couple of ass. So they got all the different tribes together, all the different cults of the Irish, the Polish, the French, everybody got together and came down on us right here in Georgia, right here in Milledgeville. You follow? And mashed us. So the men we had migrated in different directions. Those that went to Georgia, we became known as the Seminole. The ones who are going, so others of us went as far as Chile, became as far as Yucatan. We scattered in different directions, and we became mixed in with the Cherokee, so you find a lot of your Yamassee saying, I'm a Cherokee. And you say, how do you know? Because my grandmother is a Cherokee. And it goes back further than your grandmother. What about your great-great-grandmother? What tribe was she? Because the Cherokees was not always there. So they were called an Annie Indiga, which meant we the people. And all the tribes started naming themselves, like I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, we the people, because that was the first line of the Iroquois Constitution. So when the Constitution was set up here, as a remembrance of who they are, most of the Native Americans in their own dialect named the tribe we the people as a group, because we all had to unite to survive. And so we broke off and became different tribes. So yes, you have Caucasians that can stand up and say, I am Yamassee. As long as you don't stand up and say, right, he's Yamassee, he's my son. You follow that? And you couldn't do that until certain bills where guys like Dr. Martin Luther King, who didn't appear to have any value, had a great amount of value insofar as he got certain rights implemented that gave us the right to stand up in a courtroom. Whereas, let's say, the Nation of Islam ain't giving us no rights. All we doing is, as the Nation of Islam, we doing is talking about what we're going to do to the white man. Dr. Martin Luther King, you know what I'm saying, went out and got certain things passed that gave us the right to get into the courts, to get into the, into the universities, so we can get the kind of degrees, so we can do the kind of investigation that is necessary for us to make claims. And it's not about reclamation of land. The law literally says, don't say reclamation of land. I mean, you just got to be on the land. I don't have to reclaim my land. I have to be on the land. and then tell them from the land, this is mine. You know what I'm trying to say? They made that rule. Here's that you had a situation in America where you had the Africans were brought over. Remember, you got several different slave trades. And they try to keep, say, for instance, let's say each group starts basing their philosophy or doctrine around one particular slave trade. Like the Nation of Islam keeps talking about John Hawkins in the 15th. Right? Then you'll find that the Moorish Science Temple talks about the 17th century, and they're talking about Sultan City, and that slave exchange. We as Ansars, we talked about the slave trade that came out of Sudan, where the people of Zimbabwe, certain Muslims, sold us over into slavery. That's our Ansars, and everyone, and all these events. He wasn't in Mother Africa taking one group. He was going around taking different people and making a melting pot. But what they don't mention is that there were already people here, there was black people already in America, which are the parents of all those people from different parts of Africa, because they moved over here from Uganda thousands of years before we even broke up into different tribes in Africa and became what the Arabs call Africans or Ifriqians, those divided into farqa, into pieces. You follow what I'm saying? So now, what happened is when they got here, by the time we moved way down, let's move down 1,000 years and move to the 15th, 16th, 17th, and 18th century, you had in the shores of America Moors who were not Muslims. Had nothing to do with being Muslim. But you had Ansars who were Muslims, who came over here, who were brought over here out of Sudan. All right? So when you get a picture of it, thank you. You get a picture of, let's say, this is America now, and this is Africa. People were brought over here, they're all over this place here. And when the Caucasians started making rules and regulations, he was concerned with the African slave trade. He didn't care nothing about the Moors who came from Morocco, right? He didn't care nothing about the Moors that came from Mauritania. He didn't care nothing about the Moors who came from Senegal. He didn't care nothing about the Moors who came. All he was concerned with is niggas from Niger, which he called the Ivory Coast. He called them niggers, nigger, negrito. And they flipped the coin in the Latin-speaking world and gave negrito the respect when morenos used to have the respect. And then they call them negrito morenos, which is black or Moors. Now they really got the people confused. It was done. So a person in Spanish will walk up to you and call you negrito and make like they're giving you a compliment. They don't know that the Caucasians switched it. Portuguese turned it around. And morenos was the compliment, because it meant more black by identity, not black by color. You follow what I'm trying to say? All right. So now, to get to your point. So you did have